this was in People magazine, and I just wanted to read this, and then I wanted to talk about it because I have an opinion of if they should go free or not. I do. It says, will they go free? And I just want is to stop it themselves. Now that's what I believe now. What I believed then was that they did it for the money. And another reason I think they didn't say anything was because they had money. They wanted to keep having money. And I know that's a horrible thing to say if something like this really did happen. Now, at the time, nobody came forward. Nobody said that Jose Menendez did anything. Nobody came forward to defend these boys. And they were boys, 21 and 18. They were boys. Nobody came forward with that information. Had they come forward and had proof of that, the trial might have went a completely different direction. It might. Now, I think we tend to forget that Lyle and Eric planned these murders. They planned them. They executed them. They went through with it. They actually did it. And then they hid it, thinking that they had gotten away with it, thinking that they were in the clear, thinking that everything was going to be fine. So, in the big scheme of things, you have to look at that type of deception, that type of demeanor that they had. Now, I understand everything that they said is true. And they were going through this PTSD. It's very possible they weren't thinking in their right minds. That is extremely possible. But we can't take away the fact that they murdered two people. And that's what it's getting in my head, that we're looking to let them free because we now accept their story as believable. And is it okay to murder someone if it is believable? I'm going to finish reading some of this, but I wanted to get that out right there. Now it says, times have undoubtedly changed since the Menendez brothers, whose story has been told on dozens of news and true crime shows, including Ryan Murphy's produced dramatic series Monster, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, which I have not watched. I have not watched that. They were convicted on March the 20th in 1996 of first-degree murders in the death of Jose and Kitty Menendez. With the release of the latest addition to the catalog, The Menendez Brothers, a documentary now streaming on Netflix. Again, I have not watched any of this. I find true crime fascinating, but I have a life to live, and I don't watch this stuff anymore. The brothers hope that after the Me Too movement and with greater public awareness of the effects of sex crimes against men and boys, audience will be more open to understanding why they killed their parents. Yes, we might be more understanding of your motives, but the fact is that you still murdered two people. You were young adults. You could have left. You could have sought out help. I know it was probably extremely hard. And I do believe that one of the boys wrote a letter to his cousin, and I think that's what surfaced. Where was that letter 35 years ago? Why didn't that person help 35 years ago? A lot of things probably went wrong in requesting that their convictions be overturned on the basis of new evidence. The petition included a letter purportedly sent to a cousin 8 months before the murder that discusses Jose's molestation. I'm going to turn the page. Of his younger son. Also included is a 2023 affidavit filed by singer Roy Rosello, 55, a one-time member of Menudo, who claimed that he was raped by Jose as a young teen when the older Menendez headed the boys' band's record label. While the request is being weighed by the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, which will offer a judgment, a non-binding formal opinion, on November the 26th, one of the brothers' attorneys, Mark Cargos, says he's cautiously optimistic they will be released from prison. Now, I did see the LATA's is what do you call it? His press conference. I did watch that, and a lot of it has to do with the family of the Menendezes is requesting this. They're requesting that Lyle and Eric be released. They believe what happened to be true, and they believe that they have served their time for the crime. So that's why it is moving faster, probably, because it was high profile. It has been on Netflix, and the family is requesting it. That's why I think it's moving a lot faster, and we are seeing now a lot of these cases where the criminals are being released because of, one, they've served their time, two, they were convicted wrongly, they're being let go. Now, I don't, if you are wrongly accused, of course you should be let go. Eric and Lyle Menendez killed their parents. They planned the murder. They carried out the murder. They covered up the murder. They knew exactly what they were doing. It's hard for me to say one way or another because on one side, I believe absolutely they have served their time. They have become exemplary prison people from what I've seen. Their time in prison they've used productively. Do I think they will offend if they get out of prison? Absolutely not. I have no doubt in my mind that they would not murder anybody else. I don't think that's something Hills mansion and gunned down Jose, 45, an executive at RCA Records, and his former beauty queen wife, Kitty, 47, as they snacked on berries and cream. In the Menendez Brothers, Eric says police arrived on the scene quickly, but didn't seem to consider the brothers suspects. There should have been a police response, he says. We had no alibi. The gunpowder residue was still all over her hands, and there were shells, gun shells, in my car. And if they had pressed me, I wouldn't have been able to withstand any questioning. I was in a completely broken and shattered state of mind. It's incredible. We weren't arrested that night. They knew what they did. And they were surprised they were getting by with it. They were shocked that they were getting by with this. It was only after the surviving sons went on a $700,000 shopping spree with their parents' life insurance payout. Now that should tell you one thing right there. If they did it for the money, if they actually thought this out and did it for the money, they wouldn't have spent all that money at once. I honestly believe that their spending spree was a way of telling themselves they deserved this. They were free for the first time in their life. They could enjoy their life. To me, that's what that type of spending spree tells me. They bought a Porsche Carrera, a Jeep Wrangler, 3 Rolex watches, and a restaurant in Princeton, New Jersey, where Lyle had attended Princeton University before getting kicked out for plagiarism. That investigators began to eye them with suspicion after a former girlfriend of Eric's therapist told police that the brothers had confessed to the killings in recorded therapy sessions. Authorities arrested them in March of 1990, accusing them of first-degree murder with the motivation of greed. Like I said, if they had done it for the money, they wouldn't have spent all of that money all at once. They did it because they felt freedom for the first time in their life. But it also drew police attention to them very quickly. In reality, Lyle and Eric say in a new documentary they immediately regretted the killings and felt lost and depressed in a world without their parents, who had strictly guided them. Like I said, when their parents died, they felt free. They didn't know what to do. And that's why they just went on a spending spree. To them, that was freedom. The idea that I was having a good time is absurd, said Eric. Everything was to cover up this horrible pain of not wanting to be alive. During the Menendez 6-month marathon murder trial starting in 1993, jurors heard from dozens of families, coaches, and family members about Jose's cruel and abusive behavior towards its son. This is in the first trial. Okay, all of this was in the first trial. People said Jose is the most intimidating, worst human I've ever met in my life. Eric said he loved us, but he believed that love needed to be earned, and often that meant going through pain. The brothers also gave a gut-wrenching testimony about being raped and molested by the father, Lyle between the ages of 6 and 8, and Eric from 6 he was still being abused at 18 years old. Eric sobbed while recalling how he once refused his father's demands. Jose came back with a knife, he recalled, and put it to his son's neck. "I should kill you, and the next time, I will." Prosecutors asked why the siblings, who were legally adults when they killed their parents, simply didn't leave the household to escape the abuse. That's exactly what I said. That's exactly what I said. It was a central part of the trial. "You had the opportunity to leave," said Eric in the documentary, "but I was groomed to know that I could never get away." He could never get away. The idea had been whipped, beaten, and trained into my brain. In the end, jurors were deadlocked over a verdict, and the trial was declared a mistrial. The brothers were tried again the following year, and after the judge's decision to withhold much of the testimony about the abuse, they were convicted of murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of life in prison without parole, incarcerated in separate California prisons for 21 years. The brothers said they felt deprived of the one surviving comfort and understanding in their lives: each other. "He was the only person that had ever helped me, that had ever protected me," says Eric. After years of legal negotiations, the Menendez brothers were reunited in 2018 in the same cell block of the correctional facility in San Diego. Even with decades being separated, we just felt bonded. "We were not twins, but we felt like it," says Lyle in the documentary. "It was finally a chance to heal." Now the brothers see each other every day, according to the documentary. Lyle is involved in projects to make the living conditions of the inmates better, to bring some green to the prison or bring in pets. Eric, who meditates, is more focused on his spirituality. And while both brothers work with lawyers to advance their latest petition to overturn the convictions, they prefer not to discuss their chances of walking free. Eric doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to have false expectations. Now, this is where I wanted to insert my opinion. They have been in prison since, I want to say 1997. They've been in prison. Well, probably in prison since 1990, but found guilty and tried and sentenced in 1997. Do I feel that they have served their time for their crime? Not for the crime of killing 2 people, of planning that murder, of executing the murder, and of trying to hide the murder. I don't feel they've done the time for that crime. Do I feel they've done the time for the crime with the circumstances? Yes. With all of the circumstances that were there, if those are true, if those are indeed true. And in the first trial, it was, people said it up and down that this man was cruel. He might have had that over his wife, and that's why Kitty never said anything. So, when you look at it, you can say, okay, I can understand why they had that in their mentality, that it would never go away unless they killed Jose. But once you killed Jose, there was no reason to kill your mother. Right? I mean, without Jose, what is Kitty going to be able to do? She's going to be able to keep that money and hold on to that money Is that what we're telling the world? That that's okay? So that is what I'm battling when I think about this. Again, I don't do true crime because it brings up such negativity. But this one was actually thought-provoking about our legal system. I didn't want to talk about what had happened because I know you've heard it a million times. But to think about what the implications of if we set them free, if we let them go, if they're on parole. Now they are not going to get excused for the murder. Of course, that's not going to happen. They're going to be let out on parole. And just like any other parolee, they will be watched. So that is what we have to look at. Do we have anything to worry about from them? I don't believe so. I really don't believe so. So yeah, I'm on the fence about how I feel about it. I'm almost 95% sure that they are going to be let go. I'm almost certain of that. But yeah, I keep thinking about it. What is the right thing here? What is the right thing to do? You let me